Hey, and welcome to Board with Life News for May 18th. Today I'm going to talk about a bunch of Fantasy Flight expansions, a potential Hasbro convention, Smugglers, Gen Con, and the Kickstarter for Tramways. Let's get to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News. Our podcast is finally coming back this Thursday. We're doing Adventures in the New World. We're returning to that campaign that we were doing a while back, and we had to put on pause because people had kids and all sorts of crazy stuff happened, so scheduling became a problem. But it should be back every Thursday now. We'll release a new episode. There's a link in the show notes if you're interested to listen to that. And this is a good jumping in point if you want to kind of just jump mid-campaign because we recap everything we've done. Because honestly, we didn't really remember because it was like 9 months since the last time we played the game. Gen Con, we have an event. If you are interested in seeing us, meeting us, Board with Life people, we're going to be doing a live D&D recording of a special game of D&D Donald has planned called Speed Dungeons & Dragons. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but I imagine it's going to be pretty ridiculous. It's going to have Donald, Andrew, who is our assistant director and plays Bruce in the show, and I, as well as some special guests playing D&D. There aren't a whole lot of seats, so I would definitely get on this fast if you're interested in being a part of it. It's going to be Thursday at 1 p.m. At Gen Con, and again, the link is below if you're interested in going to that. We would love to see you, love to meet you, all that good stuff. Okay, on to board game news. Fantasy Flight announced a whole slew of expansions for a bunch of their popular games. First up is Signs of Carcosa. It's an expansion for Eldritch Horror. This is going to include a new ancient one, Hastur. I don't know Hastur. I guess I'm not well enough aware of Cthulhu Mythos to know that one. 4 new investigators, as well as new encounter cards. They also announced 3 new figure packs for Imperial Assault, including the Grand Inquisitor, Greedo, who famously shot second, and the one that most people are going to be excited about, Obi-Wan Kenobi, is coming to the Allies, so I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that. They also announced an expansion for Descent called The Chains That Rust. This is a new one-act campaign. It's going to have new Tainted cards, new Overlord classes, new monsters, and hybrid classes, which allow for multi-classing, which is a thing that hasn't been available in that game before, so that's pretty exciting if you're a Descent fan. Hasbro trademarked HasbroCon for purposes of, I quote, organizing and conducting conventions, exhibitions, fan clubs, and gatherings for entertainment purposes in the fields of toys, animation, comic books, fantasy, gaming, popular culture, science fiction, television, and film. So there's some speculation going on like our board games and stuff, whether this is going to be a gaming convention or whatever. And I would imagine it's probably not going to be used mainly for gaming conventions and stuff. And it's probably going to be more akin to like what Marvel has or Disney or Star Wars has, where they have like a big unveiling day where they kind of like talk about all their projects and people go to like Star Wars Day and stuff. Because Hasbro has Transformers and G.I. Joe, My Little Ponies, a bunch of other really big properties. But they also own Wizards of the Coast, which owns Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering, so it very well could be some sort of gaming convention. It's interesting to see kind of how Hasbro is responding to the rise in hobby gaming, and there being a lot more money in kind of the niche market with that, and also large powerhouses like Asmodee North America and Fantasy Flight kind of maybe starting to step into their like giant, rich, huge money machine category that they've dominated for so long. Not that Asmodee North America holds a candle to what Hasbro actually makes, but it's interesting to see kind of the market changing and how the giant companies are responding to that. Cosmos Games announced Smugglers. This is a really fun, weird game. It's a dexterity game where you're trying to smuggle bags of contraband through little holes in a fence. But the way you do that is the bags are actually clay. Like you wrap clay around actual little objects that you're trying to secretly smuggle through a fence by rolling it down a thing and getting it through the fence. And if you get it through, then you get to pick from the people who didn't get it through and maybe find contraband in theirs. But there's some bluffing where it's like maybe you didn't put contraband in it or maybe you did or whatever. So it's a pretty silly game, but an innovative game. I've never seen anything like that. So that's pretty exciting. Gen Con announced their 25 industry insider speaking guests, and it's pretty cool. It includes 13 women and 12 men, so obviously they're making great strides and kind of equality in that front and making sure that there are different voices and types of people represented. There's also trans women, and they're making special efforts to include LGBTQ people, which is really cool. It's still very white, but their guest of honor is Mike Pondsmith, who is a black game designer. He designed Cyberpunk 2020, as well as Castle Frankenstein, and helped produce those games. So that's very cool that we're getting kind of a broader viewpoint on the world represented at Gen Con. Don't go on Reddit and read the thread, because of course that's just human scum, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, because it would be pretty weird if you strongly disagree with representation and equality for people and still like my show. But it's just good. It's great. Reddit, there are people going like, well, this doesn't represent, it's not proportionate to our hobby. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe there are not a lot of women in the hobby because they don't see representations of themselves in the hobby, or they don't feel welcome, or maybe that's true for LGBTQ people or minorities and stuff like that. So it's really good to kind of be in front of it, and change takes proactivity and not reaction. So good on Gen Con for making sure that people feel welcome at the convention and that they are representing a broad range of voices and viewpoints, because that only makes things better. The Kickstarter for this week is for Tramways, which is a pick up and deliver game by Albin Viard. He designed Small City, as well as over 30 Age of Steam expansions, so he very much knows a thing or two about pick up and deliver. It is set in the same world as Small City, and basically you're laying routes and stuff for trains to connect different locations, and moving your people around your town. It seems very simple, very well designed, very clean. I'm pretty excited about it. It is $49 right now on Kickstarter, so if that interests you, go back that. This week's question is from @GameritisGuy, and they ask, what are your thoughts on more accessible rules like those of This War of Mine, where they teach you along the way? I am all for that idea. I am not 100% sold as whether or not This War of Mine is really going to pull it off, or if they're kind of like talking a big game and it's actually a thing that we've seen a lot before. For those of you who don't know, they say that you just set up the game, you don't have to know any rules, and you just read cards and it literally teaches as you go. That's a great idea. The execution has sometimes not been great. I remember like XCOM that like teaches you as you go, but there's not like a clear rule book. I was just frustrated to no end, where I couldn't like look up why I would want to do a thing, or what was going on, or if I had a question about a rule, I couldn't like stop and figure it out. Grant Roderick responded to this on Twitter and had some good points. He said that Legend of Andor, he was frustrated endlessly by, once you've learned the game, to like go back and try to find a rule because of the way it's organized. And often games like Imperial Assault, stuff like that, with Fantasy Flight, they have multiple rule books that you have to kind of flip between. So I do agree with those. I kind of feel like, and this is just the type of games I design, the type of games I am normally drawn to, if you need to have rules that are so complex that it is actually like a hindrance to playing your game, you probably need to simplify stuff. Obviously, there are wargamers out there that want to read a 50-page rulebook and learn the whole thing and the minutia of it. That's cool. I'm not saying those games are bad. It's just, in my experience, like, usually you're doing a lot of like if-then and like rules that kind of build on each other and don't actually add to the fun of the game so much as they just like make the game work the way you want people to play it. So I think rules that teach you as you go are good. I think Vlaada Chvátil does an incredible job with his rule books, that both there's a lot of humor in them, so they're more readable, and also he'll usually have kind of like an intro game, a very simplified game that teaches you the basics, and then the second game that you should play, which is more advanced. I'm a big fan of that in rule books, if you can kind of like get a person through a game so everybody kind of understands how things work, and then you really do the whole thing. But that also requires you design an incredibly good game that can be fun enough after a very simplified play that people will want to play it again. So there's a little bit of a risk there. Rules are a weird thing in our hobby. You have to, learn and comprehend a thing, and it's not very hand-holdy, and it can be something that turns a lot of people off. So I think as the hobby moves forward, simplification of rules and ways that kind of help people learn are going to be more common, because it is a hurdle that a lot of people don't get over to get into the hobby. But yeah, great question. Rules are tough. I hate writing rules. Yeah. So thanks for asking, and I will see you next week.